The wind tore across Cryovex 9 like a living thing, whipping ice shards into Rylan Cade's face. He stumbled through the blinding white, his thermal visor cracking under the pressure. Somewhere ahead, a faint whimper cut through the storm, a high, desperate sound that made his heart leap. He didn't hesitate. Every instinct screamed that someone, or something, needed him. He plunged forward, arms straining to move through the snow that swallowed his legs. Then he saw them, two small shapes huddled together, barely visible beneath a ridge of frozen ice. Their scales shimmered faintly, almost like liquid silver, and they trembled violently. They were unlike any creatures Rylan had ever seen. Their tiny heads turned toward him, eyes glowing faintly, reflecting fear and something else, intelligence. He dropped to his knees, brushing snow from the nearest cub. "Hey, it's okay," he shouted over the roar of the blizzard, his voice cracking. "You're safe now." One cub nudged him with a cold snout, whining, while the other curled tighter as if the world itself might crush it. Their small breaths puffed clouds in the freezing air. Rylan's chest tightened. He could not leave them. Lightning flickered across the horizon, illuminating strange patterns on the cub's scales. They pulsed in response to his touch, brightening like warning signals. Rylan froze, suddenly aware of movement around him, a shadow shifting unnaturally in the storm. Something was watching, and it wasn't the wind. He grabbed a thermal blanket from his pack and wrapped the smaller cub, noticing sparks of energy flicker where the fabric touched its skin. The cub let out a soft, chittering sound, almost like it was speaking. Rylan frowned. Telepathy? Or some form of instinctive communication? He didn't have time to think. The snowstorm howled louder, and the shadow shifted again, closer this time, moving with a deliberate purpose. He looked around frantically. There was no shelter in sight, only the frozen ridge behind him and a slope that disappeared into white nothingness. With a grunt, he lifted both cubs, feeling their tiny weight against his chest. "Hold on," he whispered. Each step was a battle. The storm clawed at him, trying to tear him off his feet. Ice formed on his gloves, his boots slipping over hidden patches of frozen rock. One misstep could send them all tumbling into the abyss. Suddenly, the cubs emitted a bright flash of light, startling him. The glow pushed back the shadows for a moment, revealing a series of jagged rock spires. Rylan's mind raced. He needed shelter fast, somewhere the wind couldn't reach them. He spotted a narrow cave entrance behind a collapsed spire and headed for it, dragging the cubs along. Inside, the wind's roar was muffled, and Rylan finally allowed himself a moment to breathe. He set the cubs down on a patch of ice that retained some warmth from the storm, wrapping them tightly in the thermal blanket. They huddled together, their glowing scales dimming as they settled. Rylan knelt beside them, brushing his frozen hair from his face. "You're safe, for now," he murmured, though he knew the storm was only the beginning. He scanned the cave. Strange markings etched into the walls glowed faintly, reacting to the cub's presence. They weren't natural, some energy had carved them or perhaps grown them. Rylan's mind spun. What are these creatures? Why do they glow like that? And why does the storm feel wrong? A distant crack echoed through the cave, like ice breaking under immense weight. The cubs stiffened and hissed softly, their tiny bodies quivering. Rylan's pulse jumped. Something was coming, something bigger than the storm, something hunting them specifically. He had no weapon, no backup, only his wits, his courage, and these fragile creatures depending on him. He tightened his grip on a jagged shard of ice, ready to defend. The cubs pressed closer, their warmth seeping into his frozen fingers. Then a sound, low and deliberate, rumbled from outside. It was no storm. It was deliberate. A presence, massive and intelligent, moving through the blizzard toward the cave. Rylan's heart pounded. He had saved them from the snow, but now whatever was out there, it had found them. And it wasn't human. As the glowing light from the cubs flared brighter, shadows outside began to twist unnaturally, forming shapes that made Rylan freeze in both awe and terror. One massive silhouette leaned into the cave entrance. Its eyes glowed like molten gold. Its voice, a deep, resonant sound, shattered the silence. "You took my children." Rylan froze, the cubs trembling in his arms, and realized that this was only the beginning. The silhouette at the cave's mouth didn't move, but its presence pressed down like a weight. Rylan's breath came in sharp bursts, fogging his visor as he instinctively tightened his hold on the cubs. Their tiny bodies thumped against his chest, vibrating with a strange energy that made the hairs on his arms stand on end. The shadow shifted slightly, revealing massive wings folded against a body larger than any dragon, or anything, he had ever imagined. "I'm not here to fight," Rylan said, his voice steadier than he felt. I only saved them from the storm. The figure tilted its head, and Rylan noticed the glint of metal along its scales, augmented limbs, mechanical implants, technology woven seamlessly into biology. Whoever this was, it wasn't just a creature. It was something forged for control, for dominance. The words it finally spoke carried authority but not anger. You touched what belongs to me. Do you understand what you have done? Rylan swallowed. They were dying. I couldn't leave them. The cubs pressed closer, as if their tiny courage was now giving him strength. The figure's wings unfurled slowly, casting long shadows across the cave walls. Lightning from the blizzard outside briefly illuminated sharp, metallic edges along its limbs. Its eyes glowed brighter, scanning Rylan. Compassion, it said finally, the single word vibrating through the stone. Unexpected. Rare. Before he could ask more, a low rumble shook the cave entrance. Outside, the storm wasn't just snow anymore. Energy traces streaked across the blizzard like moving lightning, and Rylan realized mercenary drones, or something far deadlier, were sweeping the area, scanning for the cubs. He had no choice. Every second wasted increased the danger. He glanced at the cubs. Their scales flickered in response to the energy outside, almost like a radar, pulsing faster the closer the drones approached. Rylan understood instantly, they weren't just creatures. They were alive with a power he couldn't yet control or comprehend. We have to move, he whispered. He lifted them carefully, feeling warmth radiating from their tiny forms, then darted toward a narrower tunnel he had spotted on his way in. The metallic figure blocked his path again and Rylan froze. The cave walls vibrated slightly as it shifted. You may lead them out, it said, but they will not leave my sight. I will know if you betray them. The tone wasn't a threat, it was a warning with consequences far worse than death. Rylan nodded, his pulse hammering. Every step forward had to be calculated. The tunnel narrowed into a jagged passage, ice scraping his boots as he moved. Sparks from the cub's scales lit the dark corridor in brief flashes, illuminating strange carvings in the rock. Symbols glowed faintly, reacting to the cub's energy. Rylan squatted to examine them quickly. He traced a claw-shaped mark with his gloved fingers. These markings, they're a map or a message. Suddenly, a sharp crack echoed from deeper inside the cave. The cubs hissed, pressing themselves against him. Rylan stiffened, straining to see, but the light from their scales only revealed more shadows, twisting unnaturally in the ice. A sudden gust blew through the tunnel, and he felt the vibrations in the stone. The drones had entered the mountainside, their scanners seeking the cub's energy signature. He made a split-second decision. Rylan grabbed a fragment of the ice wall, striking it sharply. The fragment shattered, sending shards tumbling down and creating a snow slide. The noise masked their escape, pushing the drone's scanners slightly off. The cubs chirped in delight, or was it relief? Either way, they followed him instinctively, moving in perfect sync with his urgency. As he pressed on, the tunnel widened into a cavern filled with jagged ice crystals. Rylan paused to catch his breath, the cubs circling his legs. The crystals refracted their glowing scales, creating a kaleidoscope of light that painted the walls in shifting colors. He realized the cavern itself seemed alive, resonating with the cub's energy. When he stepped closer to a particularly bright crystal, the cub's scales flared, and a hidden chamber behind it slid open, a narrow space he hadn't seen before. He didn't hesitate. With the cubs secured against his chest, he slipped inside. The chamber was small but insulated, safe from the storm outside. The energy from the crystals hummed around them, soothing the cubs. For the first time since the blizzard began, Rylan allowed himself a brief exhale. He set them down gently. Their bodies shivered, but slowly they began to calm. Then the crystal walls pulsed, projecting faint, holographic images. Rylan's eyes widened. Maps, symbols, and star charts hovered in the air. The cubs nudged him, and suddenly he understood. Their energy wasn't just natural. It was a guide, a key. Someone, or something, had built this network to protect them or to lead them somewhere. Before he could study more, the cave trembled. A new sound cut through the calm. A low, mechanical growl, combined with a distant human-like scream. Rylan's heart pounded. He realized the mercenaries were not only hunting the cubs, they were close and closing fast. He scooped the cubs back into his arms and pressed against the chamber's back wall, listening. The tunnels outside filled with movement, snow, and energy pulses. His mind raced. The metallic figure, whatever it was, had allowed him to move the cubs, but that didn't mean he was safe. Every decision from here on out mattered. One mistake and they'd all be gone. A flicker of light outside caught his eye. Something enormous shifted just beyond the crystal's glow. He leaned closer trying to see and froze. There, in the storm, the silhouette of a massive figure appeared, larger than any dragon he had imagined, wings spread, scales glinting with metal. Its gaze locked on him, unblinking, and Rylan realized in that instant. He hadn't just stumbled into a storm. He had stumbled into a galaxy-wide hunt, and the father of these cubs, the one who ruled the galaxy's underworld, was now aware of him. Rylan's breath hitched. He tightened his grip on the cubs, energy pulsing through their scales like a heartbeat in sync with his own. The storm outside was nothing compared to the storm that had just begun, one that would test every ounce of courage, intelligence, and determination he had. And then the cavern shook violently, sending shards of crystal raining down around them. A voice, deep, resonant, impossible, echoed through the ice. "You dare hide them from me?" Rylan's pulse jumped. He had survived the snowstorm, saved the cubs, and now he faced something far more dangerous. And yet he didn't back down. Rylan's hands tightened around the two cubs as the cavern trembled. The voice still echoed, vibrating through the icy walls, deep and impossibly strong. It wasn't just sound, it carried weight, authority, and an intelligence that made Rylan's blood run cold. He pressed himself against the back wall, the cubs shivering in his arms, their tiny hearts beating as fast as his. He could feel their energy pulsing through him, bright and strange, and for a moment he realized this was no ordinary storm, no ordinary rescue. A shadow moved across the crystal walls, larger than anything he had imagined. Rylan's visor flickered, showing the outline of wings, sharp and metallic, slicing through the snow outside. His breath caught. This is him, the father. Every instinct screamed at him to run, but there was nowhere to go. The tunnels were narrow, the crystals behind him blocking escape. Every decision now carried impossible stakes. "You saved them from the storm," the voice said again, softer this time. "Curious. Calculating. Yet you risked your life for mine. Why?" Rylan swallowed hard, forcing himself to speak. "Because they were alive. They needed me. I couldn't leave them out there." He didn't flinch, though his heart pounded. "I don't care who their father is. They deserve to live." There was silence for a heartbeat, long enough for the cub's scales to flare brightly, casting shifting light over Rylan's frozen face. Then, slowly, a massive form stepped into the cavern. The glow of the cubs reflected off the metallic implants woven into its scales. It was immense, more powerful than any predator he had ever seen, with wings that could blot out the sky. Yet it moved with precision, almost elegance, and intelligence burned in its golden eyes. "I am Voryx," the figure said, its voice reverberating in the ice. "I rule the underworld of the galaxy. You know of me, do you not?" Rylan's mind raced. Galaxy underworld? This creature is more than a parent. It's a ruler, a warlord feared across star systems. He steadied his breathing. "I've heard whispers. But I didn't come here to fight you. I came here to save your children." Voryx tilted his head, watching the cub's small glowing forms pressed against Rylan's chest. There was a pause, a long moment where the predator and human simply studied each other. Then a deep rumble shook the cavern like laughter, but low and heavy. Compassion, a human trait. Rare. Dangerous. Rylan's pulse surged. He didn't understand everything about Voryx, but he felt a spark of hope in that rare acknowledgement. If the Dragon Father, this ruler of the galaxy's criminal underworld, recognized compassion as strength, perhaps there was a chance to survive. But one mistake, one misstep, and he, along with the cubs, would die instantly. Suddenly, a noise came from the tunnel entrance, the sound of scraping metal against ice, drones scanning, searching. Rylan's jaw tightened. "They're coming," he said, whispering. He shifted the cubs carefully, trying to move without triggering any aggression. "We need to hide." Voryx's wings unfurled slightly, creating shadows that danced across the crystal walls. "Hiding, yes, clever," he said almost approvingly. "But they will not find you. You cannot outrun the galaxy." Rylan's mind raced. The cavern was small, the drones could crush them before they could move. He scanned the glowing crystals, then the cubs' pulsing scales. A thought struck him. If he could synchronize their energy with the crystals, perhaps he could mask their presence. It was a gamble, one that required every ounce of courage and quick thinking he possessed. He set the cubs down carefully, whispering, "Trust me." They chirped softly as if understanding him and pressed close to the crystals. Rylan touched a shard, sending a small pulse of his own energy into it, then guided the cub's pulsing glow to merge with the light. The cavern hummed in response, and for a fleeting moment, the presence outside faltered. The drone scanners emitted confused blips. Vorik stepped closer, golden eyes watching every movement. "Clever," he said. "Your mind is quick. Your hands steady. Courageous, yes, but that alone will not save them forever." And yet, his massive head lowered, so close Rylan could feel the heat from his glowing scales. "You understand sacrifice. Humans rarely do." Rylan swallowed, focusing on the cub's warmth against his chest. "I will do whatever it takes," he said quietly, his voice steady even as his body shook. "I won't fail them." For a moment, the cavern was silent. Then Vorik spoke again, his voice calm, measured. "Very well. You may move with them for now. But know this, the galaxy will not forgive your interference. My enemies will find you. They are already in motion." Rylan's chest tightened. He understood the weight of the words. He wasn't just surviving a storm anymore. He was entangled in a war that spanned the galaxy. One misstep and both he and the cubs could be destroyed. Suddenly, the crystals pulsed violently, bathing the cavern in blinding light. The cub's scales flared in response, brighter than ever. A holographic map appeared, floating in the air, a network of star systems, symbols of power, and corridors linking distant worlds. Rylan realized instantly, these weren't just markings. They were a guide, a path, perhaps a lifeline. And yet, before he could study further, the cavern shook with a deafening roar. From the tunnel outside, a massive figure barreled toward them. Not Vorix, but something new, an unknown predator hunting with precision, closing in fast. Rylan's mind raced. He had faced storms, ice, and shadowy figures, but this was beyond anything he had imagined. Holding the cubs tight, he backed toward the crystals, every muscle tense. He understood one undeniable truth. Survival would demand every ounce of courage, every shred of intelligence, and every beat of his determination. Vorix's golden eyes narrowed. "You may survive this moment, human," he said, his voice echoing through the cavern. "But the galaxy does not forgive weakness." Rylan's heart pounded. He had saved the cubs from death once. But now, death itself was hunting them across the stars. And then, from the shadows, the first of the predators leapt into the crystal cavern, its form glinting with deadly precision. Rylan tightened his grip on the cubs, ready to fight for their lives. And for the first time he realized that the stakes were no longer just survival. They were the beginning of something far, far larger than he could yet imagine. The cavern shook violently as the predator crashed inside, its claws sparking against the crystal floor. Rylan's breath hitched, but he didn't hesitate. The cubs writhed in his arms, their scales glowing brighter with each pulse of fear. He planted his boots firmly, bracing against the jagged ice and letting instinct guide him. There was no time to think, only to act. The predator moved with impossible speed, circling, testing. Rylan noticed the glint of metal woven into its limbs, augmented like Vorix's, but it lacked the father's precision. A human mind could exploit that. He swung his arm, sending a shard of crystal spinning like a projectile. It struck the creature's flank, leaving a spark, but did not stop it. The predator growled, low and resonant, and lunged. Rylan rolled sideways, narrowly avoiding the attack, and pressed the cubs closer to his chest. "Hold on," he shouted, heart hammering. The cubs hissed back, small bursts of light pulsing from their scales. Rylan realized, this wasn't just instinct. The cubs were reacting to danger, their energy interacting with the environment. An idea struck him. He leapt toward a cluster of larger crystals, letting the cubs brush against them. The crystals resonated, pulsing with a harmonic glow that amplified the cubs' energy. The predator screeched, recoiling from the sudden burst of light and heat. Rylan's eyes narrowed. "This is our edge." He guided the cubs to synchronize with the crystals, sending waves of light toward the predator. It staggered, blinded, and disoriented. From the shadows of the cavern entrance, mercenary drones buzzed in, scanners sweeping the light. Rylan's pulse surged. He had to act fast or the cubs would be captured. He ducked behind a pillar of ice, hissing as a laser swept past. The crystals responded, refracting the beams in a dazzling, chaotic display. One drone faltered, spinning uncontrollably before crashing into the wall. Another was pushed back by the cub's energy, sparks flying. But the predator recovered, lunging again with terrifying precision. Rylan dodged, then vaulted onto a ledge, using momentum to slam the cub's glowing energy into the predator. A blinding pulse shot through the cavern, shaking the crystal walls. The predator roared and backed away, wings extended as if preparing for one final assault. Rylan's breath was ragged. Every move had drained him, every decision carried life or death stakes. And yet he didn't falter. He glanced at the cubs, their eyes wide, trusting him completely. I can't fail them. Not now. He scanned the crystals, noting the largest shard at the center. If he could channel their energy fully through it, he might be able to force the predator back, maybe even incapacitate it. He positioned himself, guiding the cub's tiny pulses through the crystal shard. The air shimmered, energy crackling around them. The predator's roar became a distorted wail as the combined light of the cubs and the crystals pushed it back, staggering it near the cavern wall. Ryland's muscles screamed, but he held firm, focusing every ounce of willpower into the surge of energy. Then the ground beneath them trembled violently. The cavern had reached its limit. Crystals cracked and shards fell, and a massive crevice split along the floor. The predator screeched, taking advantage of the chaos to leap directly toward them. Ryland's instincts snapped faster than thought. He rolled to the side, letting the cub's energy pulse strike the creature midair. Sparks erupted, and the predator slammed into the cavern wall, sliding to the ground, stunned. Ryland didn't wait. He scooped up the cubs and bolted toward a narrow side tunnel he had spotted earlier. The drones outside were close, their scanning beams flicked through the opening. He pressed his body against the wall, guiding the cubs to synchronize one last time with the crystals lining the passage. A pulse of light erupted, and the drones faltered, spinning out of control before crashing into the icy walls. His chest heaved, sweat freezing on his face. He had survived, but he knew this was only temporary. The predator was injured, not defeated. Vorix's warning echoed in his mind. The galaxy would not forgive weakness. The cubs chirped softly, brushing against his chest, their glowing scales dimming as they calmed. Ryland allowed himself a brief moment to breathe, but his mind raced ahead. Through the tunnel, he glimpsed movement. Another shadow, larger than the first, gliding along the ice. The predator wasn't alone. Mercenary forces had coordinated with others, more skilled and deadly than he could imagine. His heart pounded, but he clenched his jaw. We survive this, we escape, and we learn. We adapt. That determination, that human instinct to fight against impossible odds, burned hotter than the storm outside. He guided the cubs toward a hidden chamber deeper in the ice, a place where the crystals formed a protective barrier. They entered cautiously, the cub's energy creating a soft, steady glow. Ryland pressed himself against the wall, listening. Outside, the predator roared again, frustrated, and the drones circled, unable to breach the energy shield. For the first time, Ryland allowed himself a small smile. He had won this moment, not through brute force but through courage, intelligence, and trust. The cubs were alive, the immediate danger subdued, and the cavern offered temporary sanctuary. But the victory was fleeting. A sudden vibration shook the chamber, stronger than any he had felt before. The light of the crystals dimmed and pulsed erratically. Ryland's pulse spiked. The predator wasn't the only threat. Something bigger, older, and far more dangerous was stirring deeper within the mountain. He hugged the cubs tightly, their warmth seeping into him. Whatever comes next, he whispered, we face it together. The cavern trembled once more, and a shadow moved across the ice, massive, far larger than anything Ryland had fought. Its presence carried a weight, an authority that even Vorix had hinted at, but this was different. The energy in the air shifted, unfamiliar and charged. Ryland's breath froze. The predator was only the beginning. Whatever lurked deeper, it had been awakened, and it was coming for them. The cubs pulsed brighter, as if sensing the danger before him. Ryland tightened his grip, his eyes scanning the tunnel ahead. This is bigger than a fight. Bigger than survival. This is a test of everything I have. Outside, the storm raged on, but the real storm was just beginning. Ryland pressed the cubs tightly to his chest as the cavern trembled, feeling every pulse of their glowing scales. The ice around them vibrated with a force unlike anything he had experienced before. The predator outside had been driven back, but the cavern itself seemed alive, responding to the energy of the cubs. Every instinct screamed at him that this sanctuary, fragile as it was, might not hold for long. He glanced at the crystals, their refracted light painting the walls in a kaleidoscope of color. The cubs chirped softly, their tiny bodies pressed into his chest as if aware of the danger that lingered just beyond the tunnel. Ryland's mind raced. He had saved them from the storm, outsmarted the predator, and avoided the drones. But the father, Vorix, still loomed over every choice he made. He wasn't just a creature. He was a ruler, a warlord, a force capable of galaxy-wide consequences. Ryland Cade, a deep, resonant voice echoed through the cavern. He stiffened, looking up to see Voryx standing at the edge of the light, wings partially folded, eyes glowing gold. You have done well. These cubs, they respond to you. You have courage, intelligence, compassion. Rylan swallowed, catching his breath. I did what anyone would do, he said. I couldn't leave them to die in the storm. Voryx stepped closer, each movement deliberate, powerful. Most humans would not risk their lives for creatures they do not understand. You are exceptional. His gaze softened slightly, though it still carried authority that made the cavern feel smaller. And yet, danger follows. Enemies of mine will hunt you. This is not merely a test of courage, it is a test of survival. Rylan nodded, understanding the weight of the warning. Then I'll survive, he said, voice firm. I'll protect them whatever it takes. Voryx's golden eyes flicked to the cubs. They are my children. They carry a power that the galaxy fears and desires. You have glimpsed only the beginning. But I see now, your heart is true. Perhaps this was fate. The cubs chirped in response, their glow pulsing warmly as if affirming Rylan's words. He hugged them closer, feeling their energy intertwine with his own determination. The moment was fleeting, yet it carried a weight he would not forget. He had faced impossible odds and survived, but the galaxy was vast, and threats lurked in shadows far darker than any storm. Voryx extended a massive claw, not in attack but in a gesture of acknowledgement. I will allow you to leave this place and the cubs with you, for now. You have earned my trust. But know this, the galaxy is watching and your choices will ripple farther than you can imagine. Rylan's pulse quickened, a mix of relief and caution. Thank you. I won't fail them. Not again. Outside, the blizzard had eased slightly, the storm retreating as if in response to the cubs' energy. Rylan could see faint outlines of distant mountains, the sky clearing, though danger still lingered beyond the horizon. He stepped forward cautiously, the cubs glowing softly, guiding him. Each step was careful, measured, but determined. As he moved toward the tunnel's exit, Voryx's voice followed him. One day, human, the true challenge will come. When it does, your courage, intelligence, and heart will be tested beyond this moment. Remember, the galaxy favors those who act, who dare, who endure. Rylan nodded, glancing back at the cavern one last time. He had survived the snowstorm, outwitted predators, and gained the cautious acknowledgement of a being who ruled the galaxy's underworld. He had learned that bravery wasn't just about fighting, it was about making choices when the stakes were impossibly high, and protecting the innocent no matter the cost. He led the cubs down the tunnel, the crystal's glow fading behind them, and emerged into the soft light of dawn. Snow dusted the peaks, sparkling like diamonds, and the storm was nothing more than a memory. The cubs chirped happily, their scales flickering with energy as if celebrating survival. Rylan smiled, feeling a rare warmth despite the cold. A sudden flicker in the distance caught his eye, shapes moving on the horizon, larger than any wildlife, accompanied by faint lights that pulsed like distant stars. He tensed, knowing that the threats were not gone, only delayed. Yet for the first time in hours he felt hope. He had faced the impossible and survived. He had proven that human courage, determination, and empathy could shine even in the harshest environments. The cubs chirped again, nudging him forward, and Rylan continued, each step carrying the promise of protection, courage, and resilience. Somewhere beyond the mountains, Voryx watched, a silent guardian and judge, the knowledge of his power a constant reminder that the galaxy was far larger and far more dangerous than Rylan could yet imagine. And then, as the sun crested the distant peaks, a strange shimmer appeared in the sky, a ripple of energy, faint but undeniable. The cub's scales brightened in response, pulsing rhythmically as if sensing it. Rylan's heart tightened. He didn't know what it was, but instinct told him it was connected to them, to Voryx, to the galaxy itself. He hugged the cubs closer, eyes narrowing. Whatever comes next, he whispered, we'll face it together. Behind him, the mountains loomed like silent witnesses, the storm's fury replaced by a quiet tension that hinted at far greater challenges. The galaxy was vast. Danger was everywhere. But Rylan Cade had survived and he was ready. Somewhere in the distance, a shadow shifted, and Rylan felt a chill run down his spine. He didn't need to see it to know it was watching, waiting, calculating. The real journey was only beginning. And as the cubs chirped and glowed, a subtle pulse of energy spread across the horizon, hinting at a secret the galaxy had kept for eons, a secret that would change everything. Rylan's jaw tightened. The adventure was far from over. He took a deep breath, hugged the cubs once more, and stepped forward into the unknown. The galaxy awaited.